Hola, hola, welcome. Welcome to our one attendee so far. We're going to give it a couple minutes so that people can kind of find their way in. Bienvenidos. Thank you so much for being here. We should have had some corner house music playing.
Yeah.
Play it, play it.
If I play it, will you all be able to hear it?
Yes, let me make you co-host and then you should be able to share your sound. So as people come in, we'll have some good music.
Did you see the comment in the chat from Lorena?
I did.
Okay.
We'll promote to panelists. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas, everybody. Super excited for this conversation.
Can you
Hear that? I hear that. Yes.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Escuchen lo que cuenta. Mentiras, mentiras es lo que enseña. Nos inventan enemigos. No les creas, somos los mismos. 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 Nos dicen ladrones. Mentiras. Que traigo las drogas. Mentiras. Venimos a violar. Mentiras. Que somos basura. Mentiras.
It's so good.
So good.
Okay.
Mi verdad es lo que cuento. Vengo a trabajar por mis niñez para darles un mejor futuro, 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 un mejor futuro. Construyo tus hogares, mi verdad. Cosecho tus cultivos, mi verdad. Preparo tu comida, mi verdad. Trabajo tus jardines, mi verdad. Hacen la mano si están despiertos. Aquí no hay tiempo para sus viejos pensamientos. El mundo gira aunque uno esté durmiendo. Camarón que se duerme se lo lleva la corriente. El trompa roba y culpa a mi gente. Enjaulan niñas y se hacen inocentes. Abran sus mentes, poder en la gente. Somos los mismos, todos sufrimos. Dale la mano a un extraño no hace daño. Y hacen la mano si están despiertos. Hacen la mano si están despiertos. Hacen la mano si están despiertos. Hacen la mano si están despiertos.
That was such a good way to start.
I'm gonna just stand.
Yes.
Stand like this. It's just so good.
That
And
was
for those
beautiful.
of you that don't know, Danelia Arechiga is a vocalist in the Corner House, and she's a very, very close friend of mine and Carissa's, who is here also. And we just want to say thank you, Danelia, for connecting us actually with Michael y Hector. We're so excited to have you all here. I'm going to let Carissa take over her moderating duties, and then we'll get started.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Carissa. I am the Latinx Parenting Community Partnership Coordinator, coordinating partnerships with various organizations and the community partnerships and community events like this one. You are in the first LGBTQ Familias series, following the pattern of our Brown Fatherhood series, which was in January. It's a series of to highlight and amplify the voices and stories of parents that identify as LGBTQ, or parents raising LGBTQ children, or former Latinx children who identify as LGBTQ, who are committed to decolonizing their parenting or reparenting. So that's why we are here today. This is the second conversation. We spoke with Mariana last week on Friday. And if you didn't get to watch that, the recording is available on Teachable. And so I will be moderating, just offering some support as we get started here, and then in the chat as well. If you are needing Spanish interpretation, there is a Spanish interpretation channel. Thank you to our interpreters. You can go ahead and click to that interpretation if you're needing it. And that recording should also be available as well via Teachable after this. If you have any questions or anything comes to mind during the conversation, go ahead and ask that question or type it into the Q&A chat box, which is separate from the normal chat box, just so we don't lose anything in the general chat box. So be sure to ask it separately, and we will address the Q&A or the questions during the Q&A section at the end of our chat, the last 15 or 20 minutes so of this conversation. We may not get to all of them. We will try. If we happen to not get to all of them, we will address them maybe in our follow-up email to you all. If we experience any technical difficulties, stay online. We have had some technical difficulties with our guests sometimes, or with ourselves. We always hop back on. So you can stay online, and then we will hope that we can get our guests back on or ourselves back on if we do experience any technical difficulties. And let's see, the recording will be available. And now I want to present our jefa in charge of Latinx parenting. Where is she? Leslie Priscilla is a Chicana Madre, a parent coach, Latinx parenting founder. She's a first generation non-Black Chicana with Raramuri lineage. She is a mother to 3 biracial children, a certified parent coach with over 13 years of experience. Leslie shares her medicine by offering coaching, workshops, support, and advocacy for Latinx Chicanx families, locally, nationally, and internationally via Latinx parenting. Leslie's vision is a movement rooted in children's rights, social and racial justice, the individual and collective practice of nonviolence, and reparenting. Intergenerational, I'm not done yet, intergenerational and ancestral healing, cultural sustenance, and the active decolonization of oppressive practices in our families towards liberation. Deep breath. All of that.
All of that.
All of that. And a warm welcome to our special guests this evening, Michael and Hector. Together, they are father and stepfather to 3 children. Hector is a Latinx cellist, flautist, singer-songwriter of the Corner House in Long Beach, so based out of Long Beach, and guitarrón player for Cruz Ador Music. And Michael is a clinical psychologist, been actively practicing for 10 years. In recent years, has been actively working on decolonizing all aspects of his life. His journey has helped him face and combat narratives that he once took as gospel. In addition, he wants to help everyone, but especially his children, be their authentic selves in a world that tries to fit you in a box. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here and being our special guests at this series. We are so looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for having us. Yes, thank you.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited for the juiciness to come. I am just so honored, honestly. Like, I know that there's so many other things that y'all could be doing on Friday afternoon. So spending it with me, with Carissa, with our comunidad in this space is very, very special. And we don't take your time for granted. So let's get started. I want to know everything about you, but we only have an hour. So, but let's get started just asking, like, who is Hector? Who is Michael? What is your story? What has led you to, and I think, the questions that I sent you, it's specific to fatherhood, but I feel like, as parents, we don't really separate who we are as parents from who we are as people. And so that's why I kind of left it like that. Like, who are you is who you show up as a parent. I mean, who you are is who you show up as a parent, right? And so would one of you like to kind of share a little bit more about yourselves and then who you are as a parent and maybe even your journey together and what led you two together?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Truly an honor to share this space with all of you. This is amazing work. I feel like maybe 10 years ago, this wasn't something you'd see, or, within my lifetime, I've seen so much growth and progress. So kudos to Latinx Parenting. This is amazing work. So we're glad to be here. For me, I grew up in a very loving home. It was, my parents immigrated from Michoacan, and they come from culturally not accepting of gay or queer LGBTQ, and so it was a struggle growing up in that aspect of like hiding a part of yourself, or not necessarily because we were told to hide, but because of culturally how queer is sort of I guess ridiculed or sort of seen less than. And so it sort of sends like this message of like you can't, this is something that's less than, this isn't something you should be, or make fun of it or poke fun of it, knowing the whole time that this is who you are or becoming, and you sort of kind of like hide it to fit in. And so growing up, it was something that I sort of was always hiding. And I grew up thanks to my grandma, I grew up religious, and so she would take me to church every Sunday. And so there is also another place where I learned to sort of like not love myself. And so that was another place where I was kind of learning of like, well, you're not worthy. And so throughout that, that whole journey of growing up, kind of like knowing that there's something that you're hiding about yourself, was rough. It was tough. And now that I'm older, I sort of am very grateful and thankful for where I am, and sort of the journey that I took to get to where I am and to become who I really am. I felt like total like caterpillar my whole life, that hungry caterpillar just like eating away until now I'm this beautiful butterfly. But it took a while. It took a while to get there. It took a while to love myself. It took a while to accept myself. And putting that into perspective of parenting, I was taking a trip once, and I was on a plane, and you hear this all the time, and it's like telling you, if you're flying with children, you have to put the mask on first before you can apply it to the children. And for some reason, that message just like really like resonated, and I realized that I was not putting that oxygen mask on myself for a long time. And when I finally accepted, like, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be, I was able to be the father that I wanted to be, to show up as my best self, because I was myself, and because I was finally learning to love myself. And I realized that is the best sort of like lesson or message I can offer my children, is to be authentically yourself, and love yourself, and not diminish yourself for anybody. And once I've realized that is the message I should send, because for a while it was like I really did for a while believe like, oh, I can't be gay and a dad. That's so embarrassing for my children. What are their friends gonna think? What is family gonna think? Like, I was ashamed of who I was, and ashamed to be able to be that for my kids until I was able to, love myself and realize like I am worthy. My children deserve to have a happy father, and I have to show up as I am to be that happy father. And children are amazing because they don't, like homophobia and racism, all that's taught. And so children love you for who you are, as when you show up for them, they love unconditionally. And and it was really beautiful to be able to gain that acceptance from my own children, because after that nothing else mattered. Like, I don't care who you are, you don't matter. My children love and accept me, and that's all the acceptance I need in the world. And so it allowed me to become a better parent, to continuously work on my parenting, to continuously sort of reflect on like the choices I'm making every day and how we're showing up every day to our kids, because it's a constant struggle to unlearn a lot of sort of the unhealthy habits that our families have passed down. And so that's very hard. And then also there's a lot of dynamics that come with being a parent and dealing with parents, like your own parents. Like your parents come with this idea of like they know what's best, and they raise kids, so you can't tell them how to raise kids. So it's like, I mean, I like, kudos to my parents who raised me, and I feel like I'm a successful adult because of them. But I did learn that there are some habits that we don't need to continue passing on to the next generation. And for me, a lot of it was, was religion. A lot of it was um, how we redirect our kids, like redirection rather than shame and punishment. But that was really hard for me as well. It was so ingrained in us,
Yeah.
um, like chancla culture, and like, like it's such a part of how we were raised. So it's very, very hard to break those habits. But
Yeah.
when you know more, you're able to do. When you know better, you do better. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I want to just tie something that you said about the way that you grew up, and the shame that comes with not identifying within the binary, right? Like not identifying within like what our cultura and religion tells you, like it must be this way. You're gonna grow up, you're gonna have a novia, you're gonna marry her by the church, you're gonna have babies after that. Like I feel like you make it sound so easy. And I also know that like it's not been an easy journey. I think for any of us that want to break any cycles, like I feel like it didn't just jump one day from like, I have all the shame and then suddenly I don't, and I'm raising my children to also shed the shame. And so I would love to, down the line even expand more on this, because I feel like this is something that comes up very frequently in our conversations, and any conversations that Latinx parenting has held, is like this ingrained shame. And so I think it's really beautiful that you have chosen to break that cycle and to really be intentional about your fathering. And I would love to hear, Michael, in your journey and how that's kind of transpired for you.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm born and raised in Southern California, and third generation here. So my grandma came from Chihuahua.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Hey.
So, I feel it was a interesting perspective to have, because I felt I grew up in Whittier, and I grew up in very like enclave of, Latinx people. So I was surrounded entirely by, people from Mexico, from El Salvador, kind of, from all Latinx countries. And but my upbringing was very like Mexican American, very much a hybrid, but it was interesting kind of when I started dating Hector, of integrating and starting connecting with my roots. I think that has been my journey since I met Hector. But in growing up and kind of balancing my Mexican identity with my American identity, I think I leaned really heavy on my American identity growing up. And in growing up, I think I was fortunate enough to have family, especially my mom and grandma, to allow me to explore outside the gender binary. You know, they bought me my gymnastic Barbie, you know, in like 1995 when gymnastics was really popular, and they let me listen to Spice Girls. So I was very fortunate to be able to not be placed into this box of what masculinity was in my household. Um, but what I found is even though I was able to be myself in those spaces, growing up when I went out like to with my peers or other people, that they would critique and criticize my feminine qualities. You know, I get clocked for my voice all the time. You know, I have effeminate movements, you know, and when I was younger, you know, I can definitely say I was a lot more feminine in my movements, mannerisms, and speech pattern. And because of those exposures, I got like those microaggressions from my peers, from my community. I learned how to contain them more, to kind of hide them a little bit, to hide them, to not be as expressive with them as I wanted to or could have been. And I feel like my journey of fatherhood was a unique one because, you know, I grew up in a single parent household, you know, and even though I was fortunate to have my grandma who lived with us, my mom was the one that did the rules, that did the discipline, that you know, was the breadwinner. You know, my grandma, you know, my grandma was there, and because of that, I wasn't a latchkey kid, you know. But and growing up, I think it was interesting for me to approach fatherhood when I met Hector, because I didn't have a blueprint of what a father was. Besides seeing what was represented on media, besides seeing, you know, maybe how my uncles may have interacted with their children, which wasn't always the best representation, you know. So I think my journey of fatherhood was interesting because I felt I had to create it as I was going along. You know, like I didn't have that foundation, I didn't have that blueprint. All I knew is that I knew how I was treated and how I felt about that treatment, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't do that to my children. You know, and I felt that was especially important for me in this situation because, you know, these aren't my biological children, but I knew stepping into this that I needed to, and I also wanted to have these children feel like they're my biological children, you know, and to be that type of parent with that mindset. You know, I didn't want to walk in and be like, these are my stepkids. Like I never said that. You know, I usually never say that. I just did it for this little bio thing. But you know, I always say, you know, these are my kids, and you know, I love them with as if, you know, as you know, as they're my own, because I feel like they are. And when I came into the picture, you know, the youngest was 3, so she's really not going to remember a time without me. So in some regards, I feel honored and privileged to have stepped into their lives when they were so young.
Wow, that's really, really powerful. And we could reread the bio without the stepkids
Right,
piece,
yeah.
but you know, it reminds me of like something that I think it's so beautiful that like we come from a collectivist culture, and the way that we approach each other as, you know, family members and friends is like, your children are my children, right? And so I feel like, you know, hearing that, like, it was pretty certain that you had that intention, like, these are going to be my kids. I just find that so beautiful, and also really connected to that collectivism, you know, and the beautiful aspects of our culture. I think Hector talked a lot about, like, you know, breaking the cycles, and you've just spoken on not knowing what to do, but knowing what you didn't want, how you didn't want your children to feel, right? And I feel like we focus a lot on that, obviously, because it's really important to know what you don't want to do in order to kind of figure out what you want to do. And I really love that piece around, like, I want to make sure that these children feel like they are my children, right? Because I feel like kids are so attuned to our energy, and you know that. And so I just find that really beautiful, and I find it, you know, just it's very fortunate that they have the both of you. So I want to kind of expand a little bit on this idea of decolonizing our parenting, on raising children this intentionally. What are some of the ways that you have found to do that? Like how, because we talk a lot about like breaking cycles, and sometimes it feels very elusive to people who like don't understand that language. And so what are some of the things that you have had to learn or adapt to or move into, and like some of those shifts that you have had to make, and what are the ways that those have been expressed in your fathering for both of you?
Yeah, definitely. I think my approach is, so that was coming from in understanding my treatment, not wanting to do it to my kids. So I felt like the first thing I really made effort and worked on was watching my speech and my tone.
Mm,
My family is very tone heavy. Like they their tone is its own, is telling you its own message separate from the wordage and the verbiage that they're using. So I really wanted to make sure that as I approach parenting, that I was mindful of how I was speaking to them and in the manner I was speaking to them, and the emphasis on where I was putting my speech patterns, because I know how that can make you feel, and how that can just be so impactful, and like those nonverbals, can get so ingrained so quickly without you even knowing.
mhm.
So that was my first effort, and I felt like I've done some good work, but um, we all know that sometimes those old patterns pop up. So I'm definitely working on trying to do it every day. It's a daily practice. I feel like I'm never going to be done trying to accomplish that work.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've worked on is um, is taking accountability for my actions and how they may impact my children, and apologizing for those things when I do have those slip ups with my tone, or when I slip into these patterns of like colonialized parenting, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, you know, I find myself sometimes, when I don't catch myself in the way that I would like, or parent the way that I would prefer, that I walk away, and as you're walking away, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have
Mhm.
done that, and you're just reflecting, and then it's like, okay, I need to go apologize. So I think that was my effort, is like, when I mess up, I want to take accountability and apologize to my kids for the mistakes that I made, because I want to show them that they deserve respect, and that they deserve a certain level of communication interaction, um, from from me, because I with me being a psychologist, I have a huge belief in that the type of interactions, relationships that you have with your parents bring forth all of how you're going to interact with everyone in your life. So I
Right.
want them to know that people apologize, people take accountability for their actions, and people make mistakes, but you need to apologize, and then also take action to improve it, and do the effort and work to be the best you, and put the best forward, and not letting that happen
Yeah, yeah, all of that internal work, right? You can't do one without the other.
again.
Yeah, and I would love to hear from you, Hector. How do you tend to integrate like I think, it's very rare. I'm very pleasantly surprised that the Latinx parenting community, like we're all down to parent differently, like we're all like, okay, like we're recognizing that there are definitely like toxic patterns. And yet some of us are still like floundering. We're just like, I don't know how to do this. I have so much pressure, to parent in certain ways. So how have you found it to be navigating all of that and kind of making that shift for yourself?
I think it was mostly reflection, a lot of reflection. Um, when you come into when you start the journey of parenting, I feel like I wasn't told right away that like this is something that a journey that you need to start, but with yourself, like
Mm,
truly understanding who you are and what your triggers are. That's not told. Like I wasn't told like, hey, go get therapy, like find out what you need to heal, because if you're not healing those things, you're just going to just pass it along. And so as my children were growing, I was growing as a parent. I would say things that maybe my parents said, and then when my children were verbal and they would repeat the things that I said, I was like, wow, that sounds rude. Oh my God, I say that. That's what I said to them. And now they're saying it. And I feel like, wow, that's so rude. I'm like, I can't say that anymore. Like, I need to change the way I approach things, because they're just going to grow up and say what I say. And if I thought it was rude coming out of them, then it's definitely rude coming out of me. So there was like a lot of reflecting happening as I'm growing as a parent, and as I'm trying to understand and manage my world, and also unpacking like my experiences with my parents. And one of the things that was very hard, that is very hard for my parents, is apologizing. And so that's one thing that I do for my children, because it's very hard for my parents to do that for me. And that was a huge awareness of like, my parents made so many mistakes, and they just won't own up to it. You know, like they'll dodge it. And so I was like, I realized like, no, if I make a mistake, I'm gonna apologize to my children and let them know like, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I spoke to you like this. Like, this is not okay. And I really needed to take care of myself, and I didn't. Um, and we started implementing things that I didn't really necessarily have as a child, that I think I could have like benefited from, sort of like this idea and understanding of creating a schedule, of like having sort of structure. And I grew up in sort of like a structureless kind of home, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but it also causes sort of kind of chaos. It's like, oh, we're going to the mall right after school. Oh, but I kind of have homework. Yeah, but there's a sale and I got to go get this thing. And you're just walking around after school in a mall, knowing you have all this homework to do later. You're like, so certain sort of like behaviors followed me throughout life, of like kind of not necessarily having complete structure. And sometimes we struggle with that, but implementing it in the home, realizing how beneficial it is for them, was a big change for me. Like having set structure for playtime, or for like video game time, or for like cleanup time, or for like dinner time, and just having set structures. And it really made things a lot easier, because expectations were set, and it was a lot easier for the kids to navigate their lives, instead of always wondering what we're going to do tomorrow. Just small changes like that I feel are very important, that I didn't necessarily have. And like my upbringing was great. Like I was everywhere. Like our parents traveled and they took us places, and it was nice, it was beautiful, but it wasn't very like very structured, and it wasn't very child centered. It was very like kind of family centered. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with being family centered. I just think that oftentimes our children have a lot of pressure put on them from school and requirements, and like school today is way different than when we were in school. And so I was really trying to make sure that when I am parenting, or where I'm creating kind of space for them here at home, that it allows for them to succeed in school, to have like a designated learning area, to have like a quiet designated learning area, and be aware that like, oh, my kids are doing homework, the TV should be off. Like kind of just like things that I didn't grow up with, until eventually I realized, wow, life would be a lot easier if I didn't have all these distractions. And so just like learning from the beautiful, chaotic upbringing that I had, and being able to take like, of course there should be joy in like cleaning. Of course there should be like joy in all these things, but there's often times where it's like, if there's like, how can I say this? Like if there isn't structure and there's just too much joy, then when are they going to be able to sit down and like concentrate to do their work? So it's like finding balance. And then allowing them to sort of express themselves, because I feel like for kids it's so hard. It's like, you got to go to school, you got to go do this, you got to go here, you got to go there. And so I feel like a lot of the times they don't have a say, and they don't have a say in what they can do. And it's even harder to when it comes to food. I feel like I'm still growing as a parent when it comes to food, because I feel like I know what's healthy for you, but then they have taste buds, and then it's like, well, how do you find the opportunity for them to be independent in how they eat, but yet knowing that they don't have quite fully enough the understanding that even though this tastes good, doesn't mean it's good for me, or like this is good for me, but it doesn't taste good. So it's like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just still have that fear, And I feel maybe it's fear driven that I don't think that they're able or capable of choosing healthy choices. But I have been looking, I'm like, well, my kids do eat some vegetables. So I got to be like, hey, yay, some vegetables. So like cheering on some of the wins, but that's another area of growth for me. Trying to decolonize our plates, teaching them, for instance, we grow cucumbers and we grow squash and we grow tomatoes and blueberries and corn, and so we grow all this at home. And they have a peach tree and they have a lemon tree and they have strawberry patches. So like trying to teach them where food comes from and how healthy it is to eat what we grow has been sort of where I'm trying to push that knowledge of like food grows from the ground and it's good for us and this is what's good for us, and but also balancing it, because I mean I love ice cream, but that navigating that world is hard when kids have their own taste buds and then you like cook and then they like don't want to eat your food and then you're like, man,
I take it personal.
Oh my god, I take it personal all the time.
And I think the one evolution I've seen that we've done like real great improvement on is just holding space for our kids' feelings and emotions, to let them have them, but also help them regulate themselves as well. And I feel like I didn't have that space growing up of just being like, someone's here to listen if you feel sad, or someone's here if you feel angry, and it's okay to have these feelings, and you don't have to be over them the snap of a finger. I'm not going to tell you better wipe that frown off your face. You know, it's just like, feel them, you know, embrace them, and it's going to go away. And let's breathe in the cookies and blow out the candles, you know. And I think that has been our I feel like our greatest evolution as parents, is to be able to hold that space. We're also privileged to be able to have each other, because, you know, us as a parenting duo allows us to call each other on our stuffs too. Or like, maybe you need a break, right? Or you'd be like, the way you said that wasn't the politest. So we call each other out on those things. And the evolution, I think in the beginning that was a little rough around the edges, and how we called each other out, or held not call each other out, held each other accountable for our actions. And I think now we got it down to a T where we know it's not personal. We're just trying to be more child-centered and mindful of our impact on our kids.
Yeah, and quarantine was like a blessing in disguise, because we were all home all the time. And I like never in my life would I imagine that I'd be working from home and having my kids at home. And it was really beautiful and stressful and amazing. We learned me time. So we would have schedules, and we would allow the kids, because at the beginning quarantine was sort of kind of like very free in education, where it's like, your kids have these assignments to do, please make sure they do them in a timely fashion. So we allowed the kids to create their schedule. It's like, okay, well, this is non-negotiable, like breakfast, dinner, lunch, and you have to include practice time, because they're musicians, they're little musicians, so you have to include practice time. You have to include some outside time, but figure out when you're going to do it, and you have to include 3 sections of homework time. So teaching them how to like schedule, like create their own schedule, and they were each on their own schedule, and then eventually they realized that it would be beneficial for them if they had playtime together. So they started doing playtime. So then they were like, when are you doing this, or when are you doing that? So they create their own schedules. And then we started realizing that we were spending so much time together that we needed what we call me time. And so me time came out of quarantine, and the kids at first were like not about it. They were like, but I want to play with her. And I was like, I know you do, but you're just going to have me time for this like 30 minutes. And then when 30 minutes is done, then you can go play with each other. Because it was just getting like, we were with each other all the time. So when you're with each other for so much time, you just don't appreciate each other. And so we learned me time. And then now at first the kids were like, me time, but I'm going to be playing by myself. And then it's like, yeah, you can play by yourself, do whatever you want. And so then now it's like they ask for me time. They'll be like, I need some me time. Okay? I'll take you some me time. I'll see you in a bit. And so
that's so wonderful, because I feel like, you know, I think what you're speaking to is how like children, I've noticed this about myself. Like I was uncomfortable being alone for a long time, you know, like I'd want to like text or like be distracted, and like I wouldn't want to be left to my thoughts, and like, and it was very uncomfortable, but I feel like if we give children those opportunities to be uncomfortable, like be bored then, like you don't have to, it's not my job to like entertain you 100% of the time. It's so good for their development. And something that I want to name that has been coming up is like what we've been talking about, what you've been talking about has been these continuums, right? Like it's not being fully autonomous. It's not being fully entertained or supported. It's not being, that I feel like we get so caught up, and part of why this is like decolonized parenting is because we get so caught up in those binaries, like either I'm this parent or I'm that parent, either my kids are going to be this or they're going to be this. And so it's very fear-based, right? And so we don't get to actually like explore what it looks like to just hold those dualities and see everything as a continuum, and see like sometimes I'm going to be more rigid. If I don't eat protein in the morning, like probably I'm going to be a little more rigid in the morning. So figuring out like what our needs are in order for us to like stay more balanced, right? And so I feel like I love what Michael, you were saying about being child-centered, and I feel like that's kind of like the striving, right? Like we're not always child-centered because we have grown up in this culture and the society that is, Latinx culture traditionally. I mean, not like our indigenous ancestors, but like in more recent history, we have been very much adult-centered and very much beholden to like adult supremacy. And Carissa and I were just talking about this earlier today. We were like, we didn't have a choice. Like there was no choice. Like we were going to your tias and we were going to your tias. We were going to the store and we were going to the store. It wasn't like, do you want to come with me? Do you have, and it was, we were interrupted so much. And so I love this evolution. I'm just like so hyped for what y'all are talking about, because I'm like, you're speaking my language. I'm so excited to know that you're parenting. And really quickly, I don't think I got your kids' ages.
So our oldest is 12. So we have a 12, we have a 10, and we have a 9-year-old.
Ooh, I have a 9-year-old also. So we're going to have to get together, play date time. So I just want to encourage everybody who's watching. We are very close to getting to Q&A time. And so if you have any questions for Michael y Hector, I would love for you to drop them in the Q&A. I'm not really monitoring. I think Chris is monitoring. But so I'm going to just ask you as we kind of near the Q&A time, we're having this conversation because you're dads, like, you identify as LGBT, like, gay dads, and you are raising your children in this environment that isn't always amenable to, I'm sure that people may look at you funny and like, not really understand sometimes. And so I want to not so much focus on that, but what is your vision for LGBTQ familias? What is your vision for couples like you, for, people like Michael, when you were talking about how, or I think it was Hector that was talking, one of you was talking about, not seeing yourself as being even able to be a dad, not even being able to take that on. And so I'm wondering what your vision is, each of you, for the future of people who identify as queer, who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans in our cultura, because it's already not a safe space sometimes just in the world. And then you get to the cultural layer and sometimes it can be more unsafe. And so I want to, if possible, I want to invite you to address that a little bit and what that vision moving forward is.
I think that visibility is the most important.
Mm-hmm.
Because society exists. It's just whether we see it or not, or how often we're able to see it. I remember growing up as a kid, we would go visit family in Mexico, and one of my aunts originally was raising her son on her own, but her gay best friend, was like a roommate but slash parent, and so they kind of both parented together. So that was like the first time I ever saw like queer parenting. It was my sis Tia raising her boy with her gay best friend, and so my cousin grew up with like a gay kind of step parent, which I thought was really cool. Mm-hmm. And it was different. And he would joke around because he stayed at home and he cleaned and he cooked, and so he would play this like heteronormative role of like, and he would joke around like, well, I'm the wife and she's the husband, and I sent her to work. And so it was very cute, but it was very heteronormative, but yeah. For me it was like, wow, there's like something different. And you know, my parents kind of just laughed about it, and but you don't really see it. You know, you don't really get to see it. So if you don't see it, you don't think it's possible, or you don't think it's something that's normal. And it is scary. It is scary because there are situations where we won't be safe. You know,
Yeah.
you have to acknowledge that and understand like our gut, like, hey, we're not safe here. Let's like move on.
Yeah.
First of all, safety first, right? But when you are able to, and if it is safe to do so, I think being able to take up space is the bravest thing we can do.
Mm.
Not easy. Taking up space in our families, homes, and taking up space and is very difficult. But I think that's where my vision is, like understanding that I mean, the opportunity to be able to do those things, like being able to be visible, being able to, and now I make it a point to be loud and proud and like, you know, this is my husband, we're gay dads, like, you know, to be as proud as possible, so that we don't know who's listening and we don't know who's watching. And my friends have my kids have friends, and so they know, oh wow, like they have two dads. And so it's like this opportunity for kids and other people around us to see like, wow, what a beautiful happy family, and this is normal.
Yeah.
We've had those conversations with them because there's people in their lives that have told them, oh, this isn't normal, or
Yeah.
not your dad, or like that's not okay. And so we've had them come home to us so that we have these kind of conversations with them. And so we've had these conversations, and now I feel like they are able to sort of voice themselves. And if someone is like, that's not good or normal, then they're able to like, excuse me, this is my dad's, and this is normal. And we started that when they were very young with reading books. Books that had same-sex parents, or books that had parents that were like single parents, or like just the diversity of parents that exist in the world.
Yeah.
So we have those conversations. We read those books. They get so excited when there's queer representation in movies. They're like, we were just watching this movie. What was it called? The something against the world, the family. They fight the robots.
Yes.
But anyways, one of the characters has like a rainbow pin, and then later we find out she has a girlfriend. So my daughter was so excited. She's like, "Oh, she's gay like you, Dad!" And so they're so happy. And you know, we've done marches. Like we make sure that our kids are critical thinkers. We want them to grow up to be everyone's ally. And so our focus is like, you know, raising critical thinkers so that they can, you know, take over and hopefully be better to the earth and to society than the generation that sort of gave them the world. And it's hard, but I do see like a light at the end of the tunnel, because like my daughters have asked many questions, like why do we have unhoused individuals, or like why don't they have a home, or like why do you have to pay to live somewhere, or like why isn't food free, like all these questions. I'm like, yes, like why isn't all this available? Like it grows from the earth, it costs nothing, right? Like why are we not sharing resources? Or like, and then we tell them, I'm like, the world is going to be yours one day, you got to change all this. So that's where I see it. You know, more representation, conversations, representation.
Yeah, I think like I just imagine, you know, a child who is questioning their sexuality and like having them. I used to do this like when I would breastfeed my kids, I would just like whip my boob out in public to like, like this, I'm normalizing, you know. And like my white mother-in-law would be like, oh my God, like, do you need a blanket? And I'm like, no, like I want all of the young children around here to like look at me and see that this is very normal, you know. And so I think about like the children that are in your lives and how beautiful, how magical, how powerful it is that they have you, you know. Like not a lot of children maybe have close relationships to other friends, or maybe it's just not known. I remember my daughter when she was 3, she had a little friend at her Spanish immersion preschool who had 2 dads, and she was like, Mom, you know, she has 2 dads. And I was like, yeah, isn't that cool? Like what an awesome thing that like she has 2 puppies, you know. And so for her, again, like, you know, just like you're saying, it's been normalized from the time that they were very young. And so I just have so much hope in that vision, you know. I have so much hope in the future, so that every space is a safe space, so that every space is filled with allies. And so Michael, would you want to add anything to that when it comes to the vision question?
Yeah, I think as far as vision, I definitely just want people to feel valid, you know, not have to worry. Well, I'll take that back. I feel like being part of the LGBT community is like, to eliminate worry is almost putting yourself in potential like safety issues. But I think the being able, when you can, to feel authentic and to be yourself and to know that regardless of what other people say, that your existence, whether it's your personal existence or your family existence, is valid. And I've gained so much hope in the future generations because I've seen the books out there. You know, we've read books to our kids, like Hector was saying, and we made an effort to prepare them for the ugliness they can face of having gay dads. And it's so unfortunate that we had to do that, but we also didn't want to leave them defenseless in a world that can take advantage of that. And I would just hope that one day that no longer exists, where we have to prepare our kids for those battles and those fights. But I just think overall that the future generations are super bright. Like, I just look at, you know, the 20-somethings, and they're living outside the gender binary box, right? And I can only imagine what my kids are going to be able to exist and to be without hesitance, or without that need to reserve or contain themselves that can be harmful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really you know, interesting to reflect on my childhood and like know that I remember one time I was trying to express to my mom in Espanol. I was like, when I get pregnant, like I really want a woman to do it. I meant a midwife, like I wanted a midwife, you know, I was like, I want a midwife, but she in her mind translated it to I want to like get impregnated by another woman. Like that's how she received it. And she was like, what? But I mean, just like that reaction where she was just like freaking out, even though it was a misinterpretation of what I was saying, communicated something so big to me, right? Oh, that must not be okay then. So I'm not going to ever explore that then. At least not with you, right? Like, at least I'm not gonna tell you I made out with girls. Like, I'm not gonna say that. But it's really interesting because even like my little sister, here I am thinking like I am, you know, not homophobic, and then she, because I feel like even homophobia is like very much like internalized patriarchy in so many ways. And so my little sister tells me that at one point she told me in her early teenage years, we're 10 years apart, so I must have been in my very early 20s or like late teens, but when she was like a tween, she told me that she was bi. According to her, I don't remember this, and I was like, oh, it's just a phase, like everybody goes through that, like it's just a phase. And she was like, you didn't take me seriously, and then it wasn't safe to talk to you about those things anymore. And I was like, to be honest with you, I don't even remember that, which just tells me like how internalized that was, that I would just have that kind of reaction. You know, there's like the extreme reaction where it was like, what, you want to be with women? And then it was like, no, you're not. Like I just forgot about it, you know? And so I think about that a lot, and I have to like grapple with that, like the ways that we have internalized homophobia and you know, all of these ways of being that actually hurt people and harm people and like are very much a life or death issue. Yeah.
There is one question in the Q&A, and it's, how do you handle roles? Gay couples tend to replicate heterosexual roles.
Really quickly, Michael, did you want to offshoot off? I saw that you had mentioned something.
It went away. It'll come back.
Okay.
It might come back via this question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we divvy up chores, but we don't divvy them up like in a heteronormative way.
Yeah.
I feel like because I'm more available, I've been doing cooking more lately. But and
I'll do like dishes and laundry.
Yeah, and then like I'll clean the bathrooms, and our kids see us cleaning all the time and cooking.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a hard one.
I don't know. I would like to say we're egalitarian, but I'm sure there's probably times and moments where we fall into like the stereotypes, probably. I can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would like to think that we try to divvy it up as much as possible.
Yeah, I feel like we do.
Yeah. So not applicable. Is there any other questions that came in?
I think with that, I think the thing that I may notice more is other people trying to put us into kind of that role of you're the male and you're the woman of the relationship, and like I think people try to do that, and I think we try to resist that aspect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and we try to make sure that we instill that in the kids as well. It's like, you're all cleaning, like you're all doing this. Like, you know, I remember growing up, my sisters had to do more than I did with household chores. You know, for me, it was like, you go outside and do something outside, and then you wash dishes. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like my parents were already like putting us in like roles and what things I could do versus what my sisters couldn't do growing up. So a lot of that here, it's like, nope, like everybody gets to do everything, and we all do sports.
Collaboration. Yep.
Yeah.
And our kids will call us out if we're being gender typical. Like our girls are really good at that. They're like, why does he do that and we don't? And we're like, you're right. Because we gotta catch ourselves, because like the patriarchy is so ingrained in us.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my daughter, my older daughter, and my partner actually have called me out, because I have two daughters, my 9-year-old, my 3-year-old, and I have a son. And my son, I'm just like, oh, I just love you. You know, I love my children, like all of the children equally, but like I catch myself too being like, oh, I have like this like internalized, like my little boy, you know, very similarly to like the way my mom treats him, which is just like, oh, mi niño. Like when I was pregnant, we didn't find out the sex for either of the children. And every single time she would be like, I hope it's a boy. I hope it's a boy. I hope it's a boy. And it wasn't until I finally had a boy that I was like, wow, I'm like really excited. I'm like noticing in myself that I'm really excited that it's a boy. Not that I wasn't excited that I had my girls, but I was like, I have a boy, you know, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Why am I so excited that he's a boy? I would have been excited either way, but you know what I mean? I was like, wow, this is like, I feel like there's some unconscious stuff happening that's like being brought to the surface that I want to be made accountable to, you know, that I want my kids to call me out on. So I'm so grateful that you're parenting that way, that you allow your children to be like, you're not getting it right here.
Yeah, we do our very best to like help our son explore things, but we feel like for him, I feel like peer pressure in society is very strong.
Yeah.
We'll be like, we have like dishes of every color, and then I'll set a pink cup in front of him, and he'll be like, oh, I don't want the pink cup. And I'm like, why don't you want the pink cup? It's not because it's a girl color, I just don't like pink, Dad. And he like explains his reasoning why he just doesn't like pink. But it's just like, okay, you don't have to have a pink cup, but you know what I mean, like we're just handing out cups. Like he didn't want to do ballet, remember?
Oh, but like, he was out there in the hallway dancing.
Yeah. Doing the moves that the girls were doing in the classes, because we put them all in martial arts class, and then we tried to put them all in ballet, but he realized immediately he was going to be the only boy, and I don't think like society shows male ballerinas. So then we took him to the Nutcracker, and we're like, look, there's a boy doing ballet. Look, there's another boy doing ballet. Like, who's gonna like? Who else is in ballet besides girls? So we try, but I feel like society's still kind of like winning some of those.
Yeah, those battles.
Yeah, definitely. Those male ballerinas, you know, they get paid nice, because there aren't a lot of male ballerinas out there. So in conclusion, raise your children to become male ballerinas.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 6 o'clock, so just wanting to be really mindful of everybody's time, and wanted to give you the opportunity and have some space to be able to share the ways that we can follow you, the ways that we can support you personally, professionally, etc.
Sure. Oh yeah. So, well, I'm a clinical psychologist, but I still work in community mental health. That's where my heart and soul is just to give back to my community. So, and right now I only see adults. So I work at H Project LA, APLA in Long Beach. So if any parents want to see therapy or seek therapy from me, or have any questions, feel free, you know, to hit up APLA in Long Beach. That's where I'm located. And I do individual therapy with adults. And one day soon, I'll get my private practice.
Yeah.
Oh, and he doesn't tell you, but he's working on decolonizing therapy. Like, he's taking courses. I haven't seen my husband in a while. He's like, when he's not at work, he's taking classes. And so I'm like, quarantine, like we're at home all the time. We don't see each other. Yeah. But yeah, he's working on like amazing work with like decolonizing therapy, because even therapy itself, oftentimes it's like it doesn't validate the POC, experience.
Yeah.
They may not understand.
Yeah. So I'm working on approaching therapy from a somatic approach. So like making your body your own expert and learning to trust your body again in a world in which you're taught and encouraged and told not to listen to your body. So I'm trying to just like reconnect people with their bodies in that way. So that's what the schooling that I've been trying to push and work for and integrating in my own sessions.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's continue that conversation, because that's like what we are doing too. Not in therapy. I'm not a therapist, but it's all interwoven together. And yeah.
You need to do a therapy panel with Michael.
I
Theory
do.
is a therapist. Yeah, that would be great.
That would be amazing.
I also added the link to the Corner House, the band, so you can follow them and go see them live. They just had their first live show back since the shutdown last weekend, and also a list of books, Hector, right, that you shared, inclusive books for children. They're not linked. I will also put these in the emails, but they were recommended by you.
Yeah.
Look at this Leslie Newman and how she spells her name.
I don't know how to say that. There, and then you can also follow me on Instagram. I do work on healing music, and during quarantine, I was offering musical meditations and sound baths that I'm gonna get back to again. But I do
Beautiful.
so I do have out on most streaming platforms. I have a song called Juchetti, and it is about a 10-minute meditation. So highly recommend you to take time for yourself and listen and meditate. And I'm working on publishing a few more meditative songs offer that, especially now during quarantine when there's so much going on. And I mean, we're almost out of it, but still, like, take a moment to listen. The title is Juchetti, and it's by me. My artist name is Cello Azul. So take a listen and treat yourself, and follow me on Instagram. And if you have any questions anytime, any parenting questions, any queer questions, like, you can always DM me at Cello Azul, and I'd love to like follow back and follow up with any kind of questions that you may have.
Yeah, and I'll put my Instagram handle too, if anyone wants to reach out to me or any questions or any support or any resources you may need for like your LGBT youth or anything like that. That's especially to my heart. And APLA, where I work at, is a agency targeted for HIV positive patients, and is a huge clientele of LGBTQ community. So like here in my heart, I always want to get back to the communities.
That's so beautiful. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you so much to Lorena Rincon, Lorena de la Vega, our faithful, wonderful interpreters that those of you on the English channel cannot hear, but we're so grateful for their labor. And to, last but never least, to my amazing moderator, Carissa Raya, who's in the next room. And then we're gonna high five after this, maybe do a little dance. And so again, just super grateful for both of you. I can't wait to meet you in person. You're not that far from me, and I'm really ready to go to a show. I'm like real ready to go to a show and shake it with all y'all. So
just one last final reminder. I want to remind everyone that the series will continue, but in July, on July 2nd. So we will not have an LGBTQ Familias series next Friday. We will continue July 2nd, and then the last final one will be July 9th. And then we do have Latinx parenting summer school openings right now. So we have a flash sale going on for our professionals intensive training, which is a 2-day intensive. That's next weekend. There's a flash sale going on this weekend. Check your inbox. We did an email for that. And then we also launched our early bird pricing for our decolonizing nonviolent parenting 6-week series course that starts at the end of July. The early bird pricing went live today, and it's open for 2 weeks. Yay. So just a couple of reminders as everyone is winding off for tonight. And thank you all for being here.
And thank both of you for your work. Like, that's amazing too.
Thank you. We love y'all. All right. Nos vemos. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Dane.
Bye, Dane. Bye, Patricia.
We'll just say bye. We'll wait till everybody heads out. I'm gonna stop the recording now.